Welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into a fascinating, and let's be honest, slightly depressing topic. 6 Asian countries whose citizens almost never get US visas. We're going to look at why that is, and spoiler alert, it's a tangled web of geopolitics, economic anxieties, and a good old-fashioned dollop of historical baggage. Now, before you jump to conclusions and accuse me of America bashing, let's be clear, every country has the right to control its borders. But the reasons behind these visa denials? They're often more complicated than you might think. We're talking about thousands of people every year being told, note their dreams of studying, working, or even just visiting the US dashed. So buckle up, folks. This isn't just about visas. It's about the human stories behind those little pieces of paper and the often overlooked consequences of these international policies. All right, let's start with the elephant, or perhaps more accurately, the dear leader in the room, North Korea. Now, you don't need a PhD in international relations to know that the US and North Korea haven't exactly been on speaking terms for, well, ever. We're talking decades of mistrust, nuclear threats, and enough propaganda to make your head spin. So, unsurprisingly, getting a US visa as a North Korean citizen is about as likely as finding a unicorn riding a Segway through Times Square. The official line from the US government? Concerns about security threats and potential espionage. And look, I'm not saying those concerns are entirely unfounded. But it's also worth noting that the vast majority of North Koreans have absolutely zero interest in espionage. They're just trying to live their lives under a regime that, shall we say, isn't exactly known for its commitment to human rights. But hey, nuance is rarely the US government's strong suit when it comes to foreign policy, is it? This isn't just about keeping America safe. It's about using visas as a political tool, a way to squeeze the North Korean government. And while that might sound good on paper, in reality, it's ordinary people who bear the brunt of these policies. Think about it. The chances of a North Korean student getting to experience American culture, or a doctor coming to the US for life-saving medical training? Slim to none. And that's a tragedy, not just for them, but for the potential bridges we're failing to build. So yes, North Korea is a complex case, but it's also a stark reminder that when it comes to visas, politics often trumps people. Next up, we're heading to Iran, a country that's no stranger to US scrutiny. Now, while Iran's nuclear ambitions often grab the headlines, the reasons behind its citizens' visa struggles are a bit more nuanced than just nukes bad. We're talking about decades of sanctions, political standoffs, and a whole lot of cultural misunderstanding. The US government often cites concerns about terrorism and Iran's support for certain groups in the Middle East. And while those concerns are real, they also paint an incredibly incomplete picture of Iranian society. Because here's the thing, Iran is a country of poets, artists, entrepreneurs, dreamers. They're not some monolithic entity defined solely by their government's actions. But try telling that to the US visa system. A system that seems determined to lump everyone into neat little boxes labeled friend or foe. The reality is, for the average Iranian wanting to visit the US, the odds are stacked against them. Student visas? Good luck. Tourist visas? Even harder. The message is clear. Iranians are, by default, suspect. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that a few tourist visas are going to magically solve the complex geopolitical issues between the US and Iran. But what they can do is chip away at the walls of mistrust, foster cultural exchange, and remind everyone that there are real people caught in the middle of this political tug-of-war. Because here's the thing, when you deny someone a visa, you're not just denying them entry to a country, you're denying them opportunities, experiences, and the chance to connect with people who might just challenge their preconceived notions. Our next stop takes us to Syria, a country ravaged by a brutal civil war that's been raging for over a decade. Now, I know what you're thinking. With a war zone like that, who in their right mind would even want to visit, let alone live there? And you'd be right. But here's the thing. For millions of Syrians, leaving isn't a choice, it's a necessity. We're talking about families fleeing bombed-out cities, doctors seeking safe haven to continue their work, students desperate to continue their education. But for many, the dream of finding refuge in the US is just that, a distant dream. The US government, citing security concerns, sound familiar? Has been incredibly reluctant to grant visas to Syrians, even those fleeing unimaginable horrors. And look, I get it. The threat of terrorism is real, and vetting refugees is a complex process. But we're not talking about just anyone here. We're talking about people who have been bombed out of their homes, who have lost everything. These are the very people we should be helping, not turning our backs on. And let's not forget the hypocrisy at play here. The US has played a significant role in the Syrian conflict, both directly and indirectly. We've armed certain factions, bombed others, and generally inserted ourselves into a messy situation with, shall we say, mixed results. So to then turn around and deny refuge to the very people caught in the crossfire? It's more than a little hypocritical, wouldn't you say? Now, let's talk about Yemen, a country often dubbed the world's worst humanitarian crisis. And for once, that's not an exaggeration. We're talking about a country on the brink of famine, ravaged by a brutal civil war fueled by foreign powers. But despite the dire situation, getting a US visa as a Yemeni citizen is about as easy as winning the lottery while being struck by lightning, twice. The US government, once again citing security concerns, are you sensing a pattern here, has imposed severe restrictions on Yemeni nationals. Now, I understand that vetting applicants from a conflict zone is important, but when you have a country teetering on the edge of collapse, where millions are facing starvation and disease, surely there's a moral imperative to do more. Instead, we have a system that seems more concerned with keeping people out than offering a helping hand. And let's be clear, this isn't just about bureaucratic red tape. This is about real lives hanging in the balance. We're talking about families torn apart, students whose dreams are shattered, and professionals who could contribute so much to American society. But instead of welcoming them with open arms, we're slamming the door in their faces. And for what? Because we're afraid? Because it's politically expedient? The truth is, our current policies towards Yemen are not only inhumane, they're downright counterproductive. Our journey now takes us to Libya, a country still reeling from the aftermath of a NATO-backed intervention that, shall we say, didn't exactly go according to plan. We were promised a swift resolution, a beacon of democracy in the Middle East. Instead, we got chaos, instability, and a breeding ground for extremist groups. But hey, at least we got rid of Gaddafi, right? Except getting rid of one dictator doesn't magically transform a country. And for ordinary Libyans, the struggle is far from over. The country is plagued by violence, poverty, and a lack of basic services. It's no wonder many dream of a better life elsewhere, including in the US. But for those seeking a chance at the American dream, the reality is bleak. The US government, citing the volatile security situation, surprise, surprise, has made it incredibly difficult for Libyans to obtain visas. Now, I'm not suggesting that we just open the floodgates and let everyone in, but surely there's a middle ground between completely shutting the door and, actually helping people who are desperate for a lifeline. The truth is, our current policies towards Libya reek of hypocrisy. We played a key role in destabilizing the country, and yet we're unwilling to offer refuge to those who are suffering the consequences. Our final stop takes us to Somalia, a country that often evokes images of pirates, famine, and seemingly endless conflict. And while it's true that Somalia has faced its fair share of challenges, to reduce it to these stereotypes is not only lazy, it's incredibly unfair to the millions of Somalis just trying to live their lives. But for those hoping to escape the turmoil and build a better future in the US, the path is littered with obstacles. The US government, citing security concerns related to terrorism and Somalia's fragile state, shocker, has imposed strict visa restrictions on Somali nationals. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that there aren't legitimate security concerns, but when you have a country ravaged by decades of conflict, where basic infrastructure is non-existent and opportunities are scarce, surely there's a moral obligation to do more than just shut the door and hope for the best. The truth is, our current policies towards Somalia are not only inhumane, they're counterproductive. By denying visas to students, entrepreneurs, and skilled professionals, we're depriving ourselves of their talents and contributions. We're also missing out on the chance to build bridges and foster understanding between our cultures. And that, my friends, is a loss for everyone involved. So, there you have it. 6 Asian countries facing an uphill battle when it comes to getting those coveted US visas. And while security concerns are undoubtedly a factor, it's clear that politics, economics, and, let's be honest, a healthy dose of prejudice play a significant role. The truth is, these visa denials aren't just about keeping America safe. They're about sending a message, drawing lines in the sand, and often punishing entire populations for the actions of a few. But as we've seen, it's rarely that simple. Behind those denied visas are real people with hopes, dreams, and the potential to contribute so much to our world. So the next time you hear about visa restrictions, remember the human cost of these policies. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time.